Welcome to Hope with Jonathan. I'm Jonathan Traylor, a kidney transplant recipient. Based on my near-death experience with kidney failure, we now spotlight kidney patients' story, giving them a platform to express their personal journey with battling kidney disease, kidney failure, dialysis, waiting for kidney transplant, and much more. We share stories of hope right here on the Hope with Jonathan podcast. Hope with Jonathan podcast is a Hope Media production. Never let hope become a memory. Hope with Jonathan podcast is a Hope Media production. Of ladies joining us on our podcast tonight, and I cannot wait for this, guys. I hope you guys are ready for this podcast. It's going to be an incredible interview. All the way from Charlotte, North Carolina, we have Carol Offen, and we also have Elizabeth Crais. And Carol is a writer, editor, and donation advocate. And she's also got a website, guys. You can go check that out at kidneydonorhelp.com. And in 2006, she donated her kidney to her adult son. She's also a National Kidney Foundation advocate and a UNOS ambassador, and has lobbied for members of Congress and state legislators to also advance the support and protections for living kidney donors and kidney patients. She also lives in the Carrboro, North Carolina area. And Elizabeth Crais is a university professor, researcher in speech and hearing sciences at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And she was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease around in her 30s, which also runs in her family. And in 2004, she received a kidney transplant from a colleague friend. And also in 2021, she also received a kidney liver transplant from a deceased donor. She also lives in the Chapel Hill, North Carolina area. So listen, guys, this is going to be an awesome interview, and I hope you guys are ready. Thanks again for everyone that has tuned in to our podcast tonight. Thanks, Philip Jones from Second Chance. I don't know why I said second hand, but hey, thanks again, Philip. I appreciate your support, brother. Thanks again. Y'all go check out his podcast. And as well, guys, if you haven't already, check this out right here on YouTube. Please go ahead and check us out. Subscribe to our channel. Check out our website as well, hopewithjonathan.com. We also have a free newsletter that you can sign up for. It's just a free newsletter that we send out great information to you, videos and things like that. And be a hero tonight and go over to donatelife.net. Please sign up to be a donor. Someone's life is greatly depending upon it. Reach out for support. You can check out kidneysolutions.org. Kent Bressler is the vice president of Kidney Solutions. He's also a kidney transplant recipient. So if you're newly diagnosed with kidney disease, looking for support, and so much more, check out kidneysolutions.org. And also, guys, if you are looking for more great kidney conversations.info, you can find more great kidney info. We have blogs and videos over there, and we would definitely appreciate your support. And we want you to drop a comment and let your voice be heard tonight. Let us know that you're here. We definitely want to put your comment on the board. Let you guys know that we're here. We really appreciate your support. And again, guys, please, whatever you do, anything that you hear on Hope with Jonathan tonight, just remember that this in no shape or form is a diagnosis. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and play a video really quickly for our medical disclaimer. If I can find the button. I'm going to play this medical disclaimer for you right now. Here you go.
Jonathan is created as an informational, educational, and entertainment show. Hope with Jonathan hosts, guests, partners provide information on the basis of research and personal experiences, and is not to be taken as or implied as diagnosis of any disease or treatment. Hope with Jonathan, its host and guests and partners, recommend and encourage you to speak to your medical team before implementing any treatment or diagnosis found on this show or any product, service associated to Hope with Jonathan.
And there you have it. So if you have any questions at all about anything that you hear tonight, please refer to your team before you make any changes, implement anything new, or anything that you hear. Please refer to your team. Again, guys, really appreciate all the support for Hope with Jonathan. I'm going to go ahead and welcome our very, very special guest to our show tonight. And we're going to welcome to the show Carol Offen and Betsy Crais. I hope you guys are ready. Let's see if I can find the button to welcome them. Welcome to the show, Carol and Betsy. Hey, Betsy and Carol, how are you tonight? We're going to make you a little bit better here.
Good.
There we go. There we go.
And thanks for that wonderful introduction.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I made that for just for you guys tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So welcome to the show. We want you guys to feel comfortable and go ahead and kind of introduce yourself. I guess we could go ahead and start with Betsy if Betsy would like to go first. Introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I am Elizabeth Crais, and my friends and family call me Betsy, so please do the same. And as Jonathan mentioned, I live in Chapel Hill. I'm a professor here at UNC. That's the University of North Carolina. And I've been here for a long time teaching, doing research. I'm an autism researcher, so trying to help identify very young children with autism. But just on the side, I do this kidney thing, because of my family history, and we can talk more about that later. I'm originally from Alabama and grew up there, went to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, then went to Vanderbilt for my master's, then Wisconsin for my PhD, and then luckily came back here and took this job at UNC and been happy ever since. So that's who I am.
Awesome. And Carol?
Excuse me. I'm Carol Offen, and I am originally from New York City, as you noticed before, though I haven't lived there in 40-something years, and lived in France for almost 10 years, and have been in North Carolina for 35 years, something like that. And I, like Betsy, I'm in Chapel Hill, Carborough, which is just basically the same place. And I've been a writer, an editor, and for the past, at least 5 years, more than that, I guess, donation advocate. It started out as a side thing after I donated to my son in 2006, and it became a passion and has become something that turned into a website and a book, which we'll talk about more later.
Absolutely. Okay, well, great. I appreciate you guys reaching out to me and wanting to be on the podcast. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I've actually got the chance to kind of, skim over your book. I haven't got to read it in full, of course. I just got it last night, but it looks incredible. The cover looks amazing. I actually have a overlay here on for a graphic that I can actually throw the actual cover up. I'll throw that up in a second. Um, so let's go ahead and roll back a little bit and talk with Betsy. Betsy, you are a kidney transplant recipient, and I had talked about it whenever I kind of introduced you to the show. And you had a kidney transplant not only one time, but you've had two, and you're a liver transplant recipient as well. So I mentioned in behind the scenes that you're a true warrior.
Ah, well, we all are. I think all people who care about kidney patients, everywhere are warriors because that's what we need to do. Um, so, I'll quickly sort of sum up. When I was a doctoral student in Wisconsin, I started having a lot of gastro issues. Went to, the doctor and they did these ultrasounds and they said, "Oh gosh, you've got all these they didn't say black holes, but that's what they looked like to me." And of course, they
Mhm.
turned out to be cysts from polycystic kidney disease. That night, I called my mother and said, "Oh my gosh, I have this." And she said, "Oh, I have that too. I hardly have any effects at all except having to take blood pressure medication. Don't worry about it." Well, at first I was shocked, but, then realizing my parents were, back in the 30s or teens, actually born in the teens and grew up in the 30s. And that generation really didn't talk much about medical issues. So I, went along and did fine until later, as I got toward my 50s, I began to have numbers that weren't good, in terms of kidney function and things like that. And then began to have a thinking about dialysis and a transplant. In the midst of all this, I did send out an email. I know other people feel the same, that it's hard to advertise yourself and your need. It's hard to approach people and talk to people about, "Oh, hey, would you give me a kidney?" So I let it be known to my friends and colleagues and associates that I did need a kidney, and they began to filter this out across. In the midst of this, one of my research colleagues, Linda Watson, who I still work with, um, offered. And, actually, right before I went to have my kidneys taken out, what they call a double nephrectomy, and they were going to take them out. And so she called me and said, "I've been, you know, uh, going under treatment, under assessment to see if I can be your donor, and I can." So it was a great gift right before I went to have surgery. We had to wait 4 months for me to heal. And then in March of 2004, we went into the hospital together and did the transplant. And then things worked out fine for many, many years. And then as I reached the sort of 15, 16-year mark,
Mhm.
I began again, having numbers that weren't in the right direction and knew that I was going to need a dialysis or treatment. So I did. I had a virus that sort of caused me to go right on to dialysis, and actually had a kidney donor lined up. But then, as it turned out, once I started dialysis, my liver began to leak. And so they had to do testing and found out I needed a liver and a kidney. So I went on dialysis for about a year and a half and got this wonderful call that somebody was willing to give up their kidney, or, a deceased person, and their family was willing to give up a kidney. So that's the story. That was back in May of 2021. And it's certainly a harder surgery. I had a liver that was, gosh, probably 20 pounds. So if you can think about 20 pounds sitting on your belly, it was huge. And so that surgery to take it out, plus my kidney, was pretty big.
Yeah, the polycystic kidney, of course, poly, many, and then cystic cyst. So many cysts. Sometimes they can get quite large. As a matter of fact, some pictures I've seen the size of footballs and things like that. So,
Yeah.
do you have any idea, how large your kidneys had actually gotten?
No, they did. I mean, they measured them when they came out, and they
Yeah.
were a little over 5 pounds each. And
Wow.
so,
Wow.
if you think about, I always tell people, think about a 5 pound bag of sugar, and I had two of them right on my belly.
Mm,
So, unfortunately, when I would meet strangers, they would always ask me when my baby was due. And I got to the place where if I
mm,
didn't know them, I would just lie and say, "Oh, July," or, whatever seemed to be an appropriate time to have the baby. But
yeah.
of course, I couldn't do that with friends and family. So yeah, it was just, I had learned early that if people asked and I went into, "Oh, I have polycystic kidney disease," then they'd get embarrassed and, feel apologize and all that. So it's
Yeah.
just easier to tell them I was pregnant.
Yeah, one thing that I've realized with interviewing different type of kidney patients, especially PKD, is that it usually has a lot of family members, genetics and
Yeah.
DNA and things like that play a huge part I know you guys were recently on Uncle Jim's show. I don't know, a
Mhm.
few months back. And he's a polycystic kidney disease patient as well, and he does a lot of advocacy work for PKD and things like that. Great advocate. But I noticed that was a common trend with him as well. Did you have a lot of different family? I know you mentioned your mom,
Yeah.
but did you have a lot
Yeah,
of
my
different
mom
family?
and there are 4 daughters in my family, and
Uh-huh.
3 of the 4 daughters have polycystic kidney disease. My mother did, her mother, and then her grandfather. That he's the
Hmm.
first person that we knew of, and he died of what they called then Bright's disease, which was a kidney disorder.
Yeah.
And so my oldest sister, when she was, gosh, in her late 20s, had to have surgery. One of her kidneys got enlarged. Now we know it was polycystic kidney, but we didn't know it then. And it became, like one of the cysts was like the size of a grapefruit. And they
Wow.
took that out, but we didn't know it was PKD at the time.
Yeah.
And then I was diagnosed, and my middle sister was diagnosed, and we all were transplanted in our 50s. So
Oh
as
wow.
opposed to my mother, who was in her 80s before she had really any effects other than the high blood pressure, obviously it affected us at a much younger time.
Wow.
But
That's
the good thing is,
incredible.
and people always remind me that I did, and Carol will talk about this, that I had I could say my own support group. And so when I had my transplant, my oldest sister, who'd already been transplanted, came and helped take care of me and
Hmm.
knew what to look for, or I could call her, and talk to her about issues that arose. So that was the plus side.
Awesome. I have a quick question, because now that you're, a double transplant, you've had 2 kidney transplants, and then now you've had a liver transplant. How are the immune suppressants for you? Because normally they put you on the immune suppressants. Are you
Mhm.
on even an increase of more immune
I
suppressive
know
medication?
it's pretty similar. I mean, the fortunate thing was that I mentioned I'd been on dialysis for a year and a half before this transplant. And the nice thing was, as I got on dialysis and got stable, then they began to take away all the anti-rejection drugs. And so the good thing for me for that was when the vaccines came along, I was not on any of the suppressant drugs. I was sort of like a normal person, and
Wow.
not suppressed. And so I had really good reaction,
Yeah.
to all the vaccines and now the boosters. I mean, now I'm back, of course, but it's been pretty similar, getting back on the meds, and,
Yeah.
your body tries to figure it out. Are you going to lose some hair? Or, what
Yeah.
issues are going on? And that's just
Exactly.
part of the process.
Exactly. Okay, well, great. All right, so tonight's show we've got 2 sides. We've got the patient, kidney transplant, liver transplant recipient, and then we also have the donor side. So Carol is a kidney donor, and so I would like for Carol to kind of share a little bit about her story and how she got involved with being a kidney donor.
Hmm. Well, my story starts with my son's story, since he's my recipient, as you know.
Sure.
Um, we, unlike Betsy, we had no family history of kidney disease, and he had no risk factors himself. He didn't have hypertension or diabetes or obesity, nothing. But when he was in college, he had a strep infection
Mm,
that lingered, and they did some tests to, excuse me, to find out what was going on. And they discovered at that point that the strep had caused nephritis, IgA nephropathy specifically. And so here he was, young and otherwise healthy. So they said, well, obviously this is something to be taken seriously, but this is not anything that's going to advance to kidney failure anytime soon. I mean, maybe never. Um, and said, let's just monitor this, and be hoping that if it ever does, 20 years from now, um, maybe there'll be a cure. Maybe,
mm, mm-hmm.
we you always hope for that, or at least some really good treatment, something better than what we can offer now.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. We monitored uh, regularly throughout college, and his creatinine was going up a bit, but nothing dramatic. His kidney function was still good. until a couple of months after he graduated from college. Went for routine lab work and found out that his kidneys were failing.
Wow.
And to this day, no one knows why. It was such a precipitous change. And so much so that they thought maybe it was a fluke and retested him. But it was, alas, it was hardly a fluke. And just absolutely blindsided. Here he was thinking he'd just gotten out of college. He was going to go start thinking about a real new job and move to a new town and got an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly everything came crashing down. And this was 2004. So kidney paired donation was not something on anybody's mind. It existed very, very, very limited way somewhere. Maybe there were a handful, I think, in the country in those days.
Yeah.
So everything was a question of blood type. And I had the right blood type, as did my husband. He had a kidney stone, so he was ruled out right away. And our daughter was not even 15 at the time. So essentially, I was the only one who was healthy enough, the right blood type, available and willing. And, this was before Facebook. We weren't going to get the word out. And as Betsy said, it's hard to think about approaching someone to give a kidney. And I always think of anybody who has trouble asking somebody for a ride to the airport doesn't know where to begin to ask for a bodily organ. It's not
Right.
something that would come naturally to most people.
Right.
And that wasn't even anything that was considered then. So in the meantime, he went on dialysis, in-center dialysis, and
Mm-hmm.
it was hell. It was a nightmare for him.
And what generation was this? Was this in the 80s or 90s, or when was this?
This was 2004.
Oh, 2004. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so here he was in his 20s, and he actually wasn't the youngest person in the dialysis center. There was a little girl.
Oh, wow.
And to this day, I always think of her, because what was a very frightening, somber experience, she was just delightful. She was always smiling. The technicians adored her, and they all joked with her. And I remember
she had
her
a positive mindset.
Yeah. And she was, maybe she'd had to deal with it all of her life, and she was used to it. I don't know, but
Sure.
for most people, it was really tough. And we had a lot of delays in even starting the testing. And so all this while, my son Paul was on dialysis, and it was so difficult seeing what he was going through, because he had no energy. I would say he had no energy, no time, no interest in anything. He just, all he thought about was the transplant. And that was way down the road, it seemed, if I didn't even get the testing started. So more and more, we just really wanted to get the testing going. And I tell everybody, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm not afraid to admit that I'm a wimp. I don't like needles and IVs and blood draws, and I could think long enough about it. I could probably pass out. I won't. Don't worry.
Oh, wow.
But so I was not an obvious choice to be a living donor, but seeing what he was going through, and we just all wanted to do what we could to make it happen. And so when we did get the green light for testing, I started doing it, and more and more, I discovered that I was healthier than I thought. Maybe no braver, but certainly healthier. And by the time we got the green light for the transplant, I knew that I wanted to do it. By then, I mean, I'd gone through all sorts of ups and downs of I can't do this, I can do this, I want to do this, I don't want to do this. Will somebody else come forward? And by the time we got the green light, even if someone else had come forward, I really wanted to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be me, and it was, I mean, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of living donors. It's an incredible feeling. And I wanted everybody to know about it. And I talked to anybody who listened. But by the same token, all I could do was talk to people. There weren't any Facebook groups and certainly no books. And thankfully, we already knew Betsy. Betsy and I go way back, some 20 years maybe, or more. And Betsy was great about coming over and telling our son about some of the things that he could expect in his quality of life, the difference between transplant and dialysis, as I know you appreciate, Jonathan, also. And so that at least was something that, okay, it's going to take time, but this can really be a game changer. And it was. And so, I knew nobody who had donated. I didn't know the first thing about donation. And Betsy and I individually always thought, we didn't know at the time that the other one was thinking that, but thought, if only there was something out there, a book.
Sure. Some sort of resource or something.
Right, in plain English, in plain language, not medical, not clinical, not
layman terms.
Absolutely. And something really, really accessible and practical. So another memoir, I mean, it would include our experiences, our stories, but it would be basically all aspects. And I always say donation and transplant aren't just medical experiences, they're not medical events. That's one big part of it, of course, but emotional, obviously, social, financial,
absolutely,
family.
Yeah.
And that's what we set out to do with the Insider's Guide to Living Kidney Donation. We wanted to do that. It took long enough, but we did it.
Yeah. Well, it had to be awesome to have Betsy as a resource, a physical human resource that had actually experienced kidney failure and transplant. And to be that, have that type of friend, that type of resource to talk with your son and kind of mentor him a little bit and let him know that, hey, you can make it and this is what to expect and this is what's going to happen. And look at me, I've already done this. And so that had to have been awesome. And
absolutely.
I kind of compare to your son's story a bit. I was in 2019, I was hit by a truck, literally by kidney disease.
Wow.
I had a lot of signs and symptoms, but no education at all. Prior to going into kidney failure, I had no idea about dialysis. I didn't know anything about transplant. I didn't know anybody with it. It wasn't in my family, so out of sight, out of mind. Unfortunately, I want to change the mindset of that. I think everyone should have some form of education on kidney disease because it's so prominent and it's out there and people are getting it. And as you know, diabetes, hypertension are the top leading causes of chronic kidney disease. And how many people do we know that are in your family that are probably diabetic or have hypertension and things like that? So it's an important disease that people need to know about. And I'm that guy now in my family that gets on everybody's nerves about talking about kidney disease, but there's a reason for it. It almost dang near killed me. I was just moments from death. I crashed into dialysis and ended up in the emergency room. And with no education, I was much like your son. It was an eye-opening experience, literally, and I felt like I was not prepared. And I wasn't going to the doctors like I should have. So I'll definitely let everyone know that I wasn't really taking care of my medical health like I should have been. and managing my diabetes and hypertension and things like that. So that's ultimately what caused my kidney failure.
Well, Jonathan, you mentioned that you have a lot of younger readers or
people that
watchers.
watch the show. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I know that this message is definitely going to them to say, you need to be taking charge of your life. I mentioned my mother. Because I was so blasé that my mother was in her 80s without any problems, I really kind of ignored it too, and really did, never considered that this was going to go anywhere. I figured I'd be in my 80s like my mother, but I was clearly wrong, as were my two sisters. So even knowing that I had the disease wasn't enough to get me to really dig in and pay as much attention as I should have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason why we do these podcasts and talk about this type of subject matter, is because we want people to know and be aware. I would never want anyone, not even my worst enemy, to go through what I went through. Crashing in dialysis was not fun. It's not something that I signed up for. I didn't want to sign up for like going on a roller coaster or something like that. It wasn't fun at all. It was a scary event. And so that's why we do these type of shows. So with that being said, you guys have gotten together, collaborated on this book that you guys have the Insider's Guide to Living Kidney Donation. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. Oh, you actually have a physical copy.
Just happen to have one here.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I love the cover. I'm gonna throw it back up on the screen. We can still chat. I believe they can hear us. But there's the front cover of the book. For those of you that are wondering about what we're talking about, I want you guys to know exactly in your mind when you possibly see this book, and we're going to get into where you can purchase this book, and I'll have the link in the description once I release the video here on YouTube, where anybody that's interested at all wanting to purchase this book, you'll be able to do so.
And Jonathan, you see in the subtitle, it's everything you need to know about getting or giving the greatest gift. And so certainly behind that we thought, well, this book we hope can be a gift to people, just like kidneys are a gift, as Carol knows really well, and I know really well from the receiving end.
So whose idea was it to write a book, Elizabeth or Carol?
Depends when you're talking about. We came at it different paths. I guess maybe originally, Betsy, you probably were the first to have the thought on your own, because you had 2 years ahead of me with the transplant, right?
Yeah, and and it really came from my experiences, Jonathan, truly, that I kept thinking, gosh, I wish I'd known this and I wish I'd known that. And, it's hard to believe, particularly for your young listeners, that the internet wasn't even available, at least not to the public at that time. So I went to the library and looked around and saw some medical texts and a few renal diet books, but that was really all. And so I even jotted a table of contents down and started listing what some of the chapters might be and then who I might ask to write some of those chapters. But then, living, recovering, full-time job, 2 children, just had to put it aside. And so I was delighted then when Carol reached out to say, gosh, I've been thinking about this. What about you? And I said, I can't believe this. I've already, put together a title of content. So Carol, you pick it up there.
This was actually several years later, because the donation, my son's transplant, was in 2006. And while I was thinking, wouldn't this be a great thing to write about, and telling anybody, but I didn't for several years. I didn't even attempt it. I'll share a quick little story about that. It was always something in the back of my mind. And I was talking with a friend once, someone I hadn't seen in a long time, just about things we always wanted to do. And I mentioned about always saying someday I was going to write a book or do a big magazine piece on living kidney donation, because it had struck me as so important and meaningful. And he said, if you just found out you were going to die tomorrow, would you regret not doing it? And I said, oh my God. And
Wow.
Had my
That's
first,
profound.
I had my first, wrote my first op-ed piece a couple of months later. And that, I think I've told him, I haven't seen him in a couple of years now. I've told him before about what an effect had on him, but I don't know if he realized it was the right time to hear that, because it just put in perspective of, yes, this was really important to me. And thank God, I heard him. And so I just, put a toe in the water with an op-ed in the News and Observer of Raleigh. And it was very well received, and it was just talking plain language, and it was talking about how important it was to me, and admitting that I was a wimp, and that this was not an act of bravery. This was something that I had to do, and that was easier than I expected it to be. I mean, how often does that happen, right? Surgery, laparoscopic surgery, it went much easier, and was even more gratifying than I expected. And so maybe even a couple of years after that, I wrote, I guess 2014. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reached out to Betsy, and we hadn't seen each other in a few years at that point. And I said, I've been thinking about really wanting to do a book. Can we get together and just talk and see if we're on the same page?
Sure.
And we had lunch together. I think it was in spring of 2014, and we definitely wanted the same kind of thing, something, as we said, really accessible and multifaceted, and for both donors and potential donors and potential recipients, and basically people at all stages of the process. We wanted it was a tall order, and as we worked on it, we expanded it and realized there were more aspects that we wanted to deal with. And so I think a few months later we said, okay, let's give ourselves the summer to think it over, and then if we both still feel strongly about it, let's go ahead. And so it was exactly 7 years from the time of our first meeting till the book was officially released in September 2021.
And mind you, Carol and I, certainly in the beginning, both had full-time jobs. So this was on the side, on the weekend or evenings activity. So I think that explains in part why it took us so long.
And not only full-time jobs, but you guys, I'm sure, have family, kids, and I know how all that goes. I have 2 teenagers myself. So a lot of my projects go to the side a bit sometimes because, when you have family and then there's other events going on, you can't always work on these projects, even though you want to. Sometimes you have to put things to the side.
Well, fortunately, I retired from my full-time job 5 years ago.
Sure.
So that changed the dynamics, and it became a focus for me, and was able to do a lot of the legwork in between. And since I'm a writer and an editor, it made sense for me to concentrate on that. And then Betsy and I would meet every week or two and then swap versions and work on it. And we reached out to several people who we wanted their perspectives represented, people who either personally or professionally were involved in transplant or donation. And so we have chapters by a sibling pair, man who donated to his sister, young woman who donated to her mother, spouse,
Anonymous.
Excuse me?
Anonymous.
Yes, a non-directed donor, and a couple of recipients. The gentleman who gave to his sister, she wrote a chapter on her side of it, and a man who received a kidney, who also he had has PKD, and professionals, a longtime donor coordinator from Sharp Hospital in San Diego, excuse me. So several, a family therapist in North Carolina who works with families with where one of the family members is going through transplant or donation, and a volunteer donation advocate, a woman who almost donated herself, and found that you don't have to actually physically give a kidney to support living kidney donation, that there are lots of ways, fortunately, that people can help spread the word and support donors and recipients. So
And then there are lots of other, I mean, Carol and I've talked about this, there are lots of other resources in the book. You know,
thank you.
Yeah.
Goes through and describes how it happens. Well, I mean, I love, you know, her part about thinking about, even if you're going to think about it, what should you do? Who should you talk to? How should you go
Right.
about it? And then the whole process, what the tests are going to look like, all of that. And then, you know, we have different sections. We have a frequently asked questions section. We have a big resource section that we've tried to partial out, you know, if you need funds to help support this, if you need transportation, so that people can really be, again, directed, you know, to the kinds of resources that they want. And one of the things that I felt strongly about is I'm such a positive person that I assumed my family were going to be all positive. And so every time anything about my double nephrectomy or my transplant would come up, you know, I would just say, well, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Mommy's going to be fine, and so forth. And to my husband, who's quite a worrier, I just assumed he'd think it was fine too. And in reality, they were all worrying in their own little sort of spots. When the kids would bring it up in front of my husband, he would say, no, let's not talk about anything bad. So, you know, the poor kids had nowhere to go to then share their worries and their concerns. So later we sought out a therapist in the community who worked with all of us together. And it was great. She had us go through a timeline, and all of us talked about our feelings and our worries and hopes and dreams during that. And it just helped us so much. So I write a lot, you know, about some of those emotional, social issues that we all need to be thinking about, because when you're a donor in particular, or maybe a donee at the same time, that you're a recipient at the same time, that you're thinking everybody's focused on you, and it's not focused on the family and everybody else. And so, you know, I just encourage people to think about all of these emotional, social aspects for their family and even their friends and parents and others.
Yeah, that was my next question. You guys pretty much answered it. Was some important key parts of the book. It's the insider's guide to living kidney donation. So you know, I'm guessing that I haven't had a chance to really read over the complete book, and it sounds incredible. And that was one of my questions, was some important key parts of the book. And it sounds like you guys have some great reference points. And some frequently asked questions. I know a lot of frequently asked questions are, can I really live with one kidney? And what's my health going to look like? What am I going to survive? Will I live a long life? Things like that. And then there's the monetary thing, where, like, what is covered? Is insurance going to play a part? How does insurance play a part? Things like that. I know one question in particular is sometimes comes up that I've heard of is travel, where people are concerned about maybe like airfare and things like that, if they possibly wanted to donate out of state. Some patients get listed in multiple programs, multiple hospitals. And so that becomes a worry for some. And then, of course, you know, now we've got the Living Donor Protection Act that hopefully we're going to be seeing passed throughout the whole. Well, it'd be nice if the whole world would pass it, but here in the United States, which I think is going to be awesome and really help out a lot of, you know, potential donors to go ahead and step forth, because they're going to have some, you know, federal protection for their jobs and stuff like that, and where it comes with insurance. But I think it's awesome that you guys wanted to get together, and especially sharing your personal journeys and your story. It's a great way through the way of book. If people are interested let's talk about where people can find your book at. Where right now actively, where can people find your book if they're interested?
Most anywhere, certainly Amazon, any major retailer. Excuse me. You can go into any bookstore can order it. So whatever your favorite outlet is, and we let's see, it was something I wanted to mention. Oh, and okay, I think I may be losing a connection.
I can
Yeah.
hear you fine.
Oh, okay. I just got a warning.
And that was what happened to me too, Carol. It worked out okay.
Oh, okay. I forget now what I was going to say.
Well, I'm just going to add that we, our local bookstore, got an order and asked us to come and sign it for the person who bought it. So that was nice. We felt good about going there and sign it.
Yeah.
And one other thing I would add, these stories from all these different types of donors, recipients, we tried to be not just Chapel Hill or North Carolina. So Carol mentioned San Diego. There are people from across the country that we either heard about through friends or read about stories about them, like the husband who gave to his he's a medical person in the kidney field, and he gave to his wife who's also in the kidney field and a medical person. We just saw a story about them from San Francisco, and so we eventually got in contact with them and asked them to write about their story. So it's we hope at least a representation that people will read different chapters and see themselves in different scenarios.
Absolutely, yeah, connecting. People need that personal connection. They want to connect to something, that's real, not made up or produced. And it's nice to be able to connect with someone else's journey and things like that. Carol, did you have something else that you wanted to add?
Yes, I did. The book, as we said, is for the average person, the lay person. But in researching it, we came across a number of journal articles that were really interesting. And so the bibliography and suggested reading includes journal articles also. It includes newspaper articles, average local magazines and such. But there are a number of really important journal articles listed as well. And so we're hoping that providers who work with families of kidney patients or donors will actually check out the book, and we've had a really good reaction from them. So we would love to see the book in transplant centers and dialysis clinics.
And recently, one of the transplant coordinators, living donor coordinator that we had talked with, sent us an email to tell us that she'd read the book and she was so inspired, she's decided to be a donor. I mean, it was just
that's awesome.
Thrill.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
So we hope for that too, that maybe a few people will get inspired and think, well, okay, if Carol can do this, then I can do this.
Yeah, that would have put cold chills down my spine, literally, if someone would have come up and said, "Hey, your book influenced me to be a donor." I mean, what a great gift in itself to give the gift of life to someone else, and then have someone come up to you and say, "Hey, your book inspired me." So you're doing something right when something positive like that comes along. That's amazing. Impacting lives. That's what this is all about, is sharing your story. And that's why I'm never afraid to share my story. I have strangers sometimes, somehow I come in contact with people, and I get into the subject of, this is what happened to me, and somehow it just always happens. And I just think that there's power in sharing your personal story. You never know who you're going to impact. So that's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah. And I like your idea about having it as a reference at dialysis centers and transplant facilities and hospitals. And that's a great idea. Great point of reference. So
when we get to the point of in-person events and comfortably speaking in public at things, it would be great to go into a dialysis clinic and talk to people. So for now, things are virtual. In fact, this week I'm going to be speaking virtually to a NKF workshop, first step to transplant. And those are the kinds of things Betsy and I spoke at in person a few years ago. So I hope we get to do it again.
Yeah, knock on wood, things seem to be okay. Turning another leaf, maybe, hopefully, with the COVID. We'll see what happens. You never know when another variant will be announced.
Yeah.
It
Well,
seems.
now they're talking about this subvariant that's
What is it?
hitting Europe.
BA2.
Oh, yeah.
The BA2 Omicron. I had Omicron. Yeah, I was a good boy. I did everything right for 2 years. I was like boy in the bubble, literally. My wife did the grocery shopping, and I used hand sanitizer everywhere, wore the mask. I was so careful. And she went to work, and someone had came to her job and had COVID and worked, and they gave COVID to everybody, literally. And then she came home and brought it to me. And but luckily it was not the first wave. I really feel like that first wave was really, really bad. Omicron's terrible. I mean, you don't want COVID in any shape or form, okay? Especially if you're immune compromised. But Omicron, it didn't affect me. Thanks be to God, it didn't affect me that bad. But I did run a fever. And but I was drinking a lot of fluids. I just kept pumping the fluids, and even when I didn't feel like it, I was just drinking water like crazy, and getting a lot of rest and things like that. And then about the third day, I made myself go for about a 2-mile walk, and I said, "Man, I've got to get out of this house, get some blood circulation." And that exercise made me feel incredible, and I just felt so much better. I just a few days later, I started having my taste come back and all that stuff, and I felt really good. The crazy thing was I had reached out to my transplant hospital, and they didn't have any monoclonal antibodies or anything available, and they told me just you're gonna have to tough it out, But with all that being said, I look forward to you guys progressing with your talking about your book, and I wish you guys all the best with it. It sounds incredible. I've got an e-copy, so I'm going to definitely be trying to read over it and take a look at it for sure. Because
send us feedback. We like hearing what you thought about it, particularly as a recipient. It'll mean a lot to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, our show's about hope, and we like to close out our shows with a message of hope. And, it's the subject's been about organ donation and living kidney donation. So if you have a message of hope that you would like to send someone about that may be on the cusp of maybe deciding to be someone's donor, you never know what you say in this interview. They come across it, watch it, may put them over the edge and want to go ahead and step forward. So anything that you'd like to share in this interview to someone that's potentially.
Well, I will comment and then let Carol too. But one of the things after my transplant, the first transplant with my friend, I had this, and they gave me all these materials in the hospital to read about taking care of your kidney. And I kind of got overwhelmed as I read all this stuff, and I started feeling really guilty and thinking, oh my gosh, what if I mess up and this kidney, dies and doesn't work, And so in some ways it was a pretty big burden on me. And luckily within hours, actually, my transplant or a nephrologist came by, and I told her, so concerned about this. And she said, now, Betsy, you've always taken your medications. You come to doctor visits. You're very, conscientious about your health. What would make you think you're going to fall off the rails and all of a sudden not, be able to take care of this kidney? And of course that helped. Then the second thing was Linda, my donor. I just, again, felt really a little bit of guilt and responsibility to her that she had gone through this and done this for me. And soon after the transplant, after we both got out of the hospital, she sent me this beautiful card. And it was this rising swan, and there was a saying on the front. And she wrote in there and said, I know you think you have given all to me, but in fact, you have given me a lot too. And this giving for me to you has brought me, I'm going to get teary, closer to wholeness in my life. And so I thank you. And it was, it was so rewarding to realize that she really had gotten something out of this too. I wasn't the only one.
Oh, that's beautiful, Elizabeth. Carol, what do you have?
Sure. Well, I always say if a wimp like me can donate a kidney, you probably can too. But not to be flip, you don't have to be brave. You have to be healthy, and you have to really want to do it. And don't ever be afraid to start for fear that there's no turning back. You can literally change your mind that day of the surgery. We hope no one would actually do that, but it's been done. But the transplant team understands that it's a big deal. It's a big decision. And oh gosh, somebody just put, I just got some chills.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I get chills all the time when I hear, like Jonathan said, that somebody was moved to think about donating. And I would just say, don't be afraid to share your fears or your hesitation. It is a big deal. Donation is not for everybody, but all we're asking in doing the book and in being an advocate is for people to come to it with an open mind, with an education, to know, to be fully informed, and then to have an open mind. I would never judge someone who had an open mind about the process and about the decision and chose not to. There's so many
Carol,
ways.
I always felt like one of the things that you pointed out was not only that you can turn back, but the message that goes to your recipient is this was not going to work and she was not a donor. So it doesn't leave the burden on you to say, oh, I just didn't want to do it, or I'm afraid. They kind of cover you. And I think that's another piece of grace, that the Transplant Center offers.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for coming on, and what beautiful messages of hope that you guys shared with sharing your story and your journey and now your book. So I really appreciate you guys sharing your story with us. And I want to flash this up there again. Guys, go check out this book. It's pretty much in all major outlets. I'm guessing Amazon is probably going to be a great resource for you to reach out to. And look, a lot of people shop online now, so you can go to Amazon and find it. It's The Insider's Guide to Living Kidney Donation by Carol Offen and Elizabeth Crais. And I really, really appreciate you guys are awesome advocates. And Carol, you keep calling yourself a wimp, but you're a hero. You are you are a strong individual and amazing. Elizabeth, you're a strong kidney and now liver transplant warrior. So just amazing.
Well, and you too, Jonathan. And we appreciate being on the show. We hope more people will hear about the book and read it or pass it on to others who might need it.
Yeah.
So we thank you for taking the time to interview us.
And thank you for what you do, Jonathan. This is a wonderful vehicle for bringing this into people's homes and learning about it, and particularly young people who may feel that they're not.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I want to thank everyone for watching the show tonight. Charles Picaro, I believe he was just recently on Jim Myers' show. Uncle Jim interviewed him. He's a kidney warrior that's in need. You can refer to Jim Myers over on Facebook for kidney stories. He just interviewed him. If you're interested at all about his story, he needs a living kidney donor. So check out that video for more references. Reach out to Uncle Jim Myers, and appreciate Mike Ashley for watching the show. And they're from North Carolina. Mike, he was asking where you guys are from. They're from North Carolina. I believe Carol originally is from New York. And he says, great job to all. So thanks again, Mike, for watching the show. Appreciate you tonight. But hey, guys, listen, with all that being said, I really appreciate Carol and Elizabeth for coming on, and I appreciate everyone's support for our show. You guys take care, stay safe, and definitely take care of your kidneys.
Yes, you too. Thanks again.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Hey guys, have you checked out Kidney Conversations, a new series brought to you by host Hope with Jonathan and KWM's Kidney Warrior merch, Kyle Hawkers from Toronto, Canada. Yes, it's a brand new series brought to you by us for you as the kidney patient. We're trying to inform, educate, and inspire by sharing and spreading awareness for kidney disease, dialysis, kidney failure, transplant, organ donation, and so much more. This is a brand new series, guys, brought to you by Hope with Jonathan and Kidney Warrior merch. What we're going to do is post weekly on our pages across social media. Right now it's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then on Friday, we'll be releasing an informative video over on Hope with Jonathan. Check it out, guys. kidneyconversations.info.
Hey guys, have you been over to hopewithjonathan.com? You can actually listen to the audio podcast, watch live streaming interviews, purchase merch to help support Hope with Jonathan podcast, read blogs, and much, much more. For more information on this, go check out hopewithjonathan.com, where we share stories of hope.